Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Nazir daf Lamed Daled. We're going to begin on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. Masdisen roas a koi, or a person sees this koi, which some people translate as a water buffalo. It's not exactly so sure whether or not it's a domesticated or non-domesticated animal, as we're going to see. V'amar hareini nazir shezeh chaya. I'll be a Nazir provided that this in fact is a chaya. This is a wild animal. Hareini Nazir shezeh enu chaya. And then you have a second person that says, I'm a Nazir if it's not a wild animal. And then you have a third person, Hareini Nazir shezeh behema. I'm a Nazir on condition this is a domesticated animal. Fourth person says, Hareini Nazir she'ein zeh behema. So apparently one of these people have got to be right, or two of these four. Hareini Nazir shezeh chaya ubehema. I am going to be Nazir assuming that I'm both, that this animal has both qualities. Hareini Nazir she'ein zeh lo chayav lo behema, it's neither. Hareini Nazir she'echem mikem Nazir. Another person comes and says, I'll be a Nazir if one of you guys is a Nazir. And then someone says, Hareini Nazir she'ein echem mikem Nazir. I'll be a Nazir if one of them you are not is not Nazir. Hareini Nazir she'kulchem Nazirim. And the last person says, on condition that you're all Nazirim, so we say in that case, Harikul and Nazirin. They're all considered Nazirin. And if you look in the Mafarish, it says, so in this situation, it's either Nazir b'tois, or it's because that we would assume that this person really wants to make themselves into a Nazir, and he just said this like along the way, but it doesn't mean that it was like a stipulation, that if it wasn't the case, then he wouldn't be a Nazir. Okay, so this Gemara says as follows. Tani Chada. Tisha Nazirin, one says it was actually 9 different people that made this statement, which is the Pasha reading of our Mishnah. There was actually 9 people that wanted to become a Nazir. Tani Idach Tesha Nazirios, that there was actually one person over here, and they made these 9 different statements. Now, Bishlam and Tisha Nazirim, I can understand for the 9 different people, can go into Habi Gabri Tfei, V'isvis V'ozelbei. So, in other words, there was another person came along, and he wanted to be matvis along him. So, if you look in, I guess, okay, fine. Let's not see the Mafarish. But, let's look in Taisus. L'inyan ha-Mafarish b'Mishnah ela tisha naziriyos b'adam echad heichem shkachas. How do we find tisha naziriyos l'chad gaver heichem shkachas? How do we find that? So continue in Taisus. So we'll actually continue. Bishlama she's mishkachas. 6 I can find, kid it not. Like we learned. Look in the Mafarish. The kamaisa, the koi matzil minkri chad gavra. Ela idach baba the chad mischav nazir shein ech mikem nazir lo mishkachas lo ela begavi tova. When it comes to the other case, shein ech mikem nazir, that the person says on condition that one who's not a nazir, we're not going to find ela begavi tova. Obviously, we're talking about many people because it's saying kulchem. So the whole language doesn't make any sense. All of you. What do you mean all of you? It doesn't make any sense. We're not talking about if it's only one person. So who's he talking to? So Gemara says like this: so that one person hearing the 9 people of our Mishnah and says, "I take upon all of your status on me." So you're right. Really, there's 9 different people, and then you have one other person that hears it. Says Taisus. There were 9 people that did hatfasa with this koi, as we saw in the Mishnah. The Omer, now you have this new guy who listened to everything. He said, Harei kol din nazirus kulchem. I'll be a Nazir all like 9 times. Hari yeshul of tisha sveikos nazirus, even though it's a whole doubt. And he says like this: if he wants to fix himself, he should make the following condition. Remember, if I actually have an obligation to do 9, so then I'm Nazir chayva. So, and if they don't work, so then I'll still be a Nazir b'nadava. So, Mamanashach, he'll be able to still be a Nazir. Question 11. So as we said, so Mishkachsel, he saw 9 people who had matvis by Nazirus connected to a koi, and he said, Harline Nazirus kulchem. I'm going to be Nazir of all of you. So Har Yeshul of Tisha Svekos Nazirus. So he's in doubt 9 times. And that the Kanas we saw in Taisus, so he says if I'm the 9 Nazirus is actually Chayva and Gan. I'm a Nazir Chayva. If not, I'll be a Nazir through the Dava. Hadun Alach Beishamai, Hanach Beishamai, Hanach Beishamai. We now continue to the 6th parak in this Masechta. Just want to get a sense. So this Masechta ends in a while. Well, not so much in a while, on Daf Samach Vav. So we're basically halfway through, and Samach Vav is only going to go until Perek, then has 9 prakim. So now we're starting the 6th parak. So we already saw 5 of the 9 prakim. Here we go. Shloishim minin asurin benazir. As we know, there's 3 activities that a nazir is not to do. Hatuma, he's not to become tameh, as the Taisus says. The chsiv al nefesh meis lo yavo. Also his skalachas, he can't cut his hair, as it says in the pasuk. Taisus brings down. Anavim lachem yaveshim lo yoichel. He's not allowed to eat grapes, whether dry or wet, namely a liquid, as like wine, as well as okay, fine. If the galachas kadeshia gedel pera, and then I said v'yotzim hagefen, fine. So those are the 3 things. Now v'chol yotzim hagefen mitzdarfen zemzeh. The din is they're all mitzdarf one another. So look in Taisus. Actually, look in the Mefarish rather. Kagoyin chartzen v'yayin v'chaymitz mitzdarfen zemzeh kazayis. Whether it's wine, whether it's the seeds, whether it's vinegar, whether it's the peel. Okay, so you're gonna be chayiv. They're all mistarv. Back in the Mishnah, ve'en chayiv an sheyoichel min hanavim kazayis. Fine, and this says you're only be chayiv until you eat from grapes a kazayis. So this says the Mefarish, v'hanami mechayiv ad zog v'chartzon. The truth is, you're also chayiv on zog and chartzon, on peels and on seed. He's just mentioning that the shear is a kazayas. He just mentions that to exclude the sheet of Rabbi Lezer, which we're going to see in the Gemara. But nonetheless, the truth is, it is mastarif, and it also includes zog and chartz. And as we continue to Lamed Daled, Amud Beis. Okay. So Mishnah Shainam says the Mefarish, Hayu Shainim Shenu Chayiv Ad Sheish the Revius Yayin. That originally we said you're only going to be chayiv until you drink Revius of Yayin. So let's back in the Mishnah. Amrid Ad Sheish the Revius Yayin. Rabbi Kiva Oimer Yafil Shar Pito B'Yayin. Even if you soak bread into wine, so that is also going to be mistarif, and we're going to get into all that. This is a sugi and chul and other places in Psachim. Okay, so v'yesh bo kadei l'sarif kazayas chayev. So actually, the bread, even though it's not wine, but together with the bread, it's going to combine together to make it to be a kazayas, and you'll end up being chayev. Okay, fine. So in this, fine. The chayev al yain bifni atzman, the al novim bifni atzman, and you're chayev on the grapes by themselves and on the wine by itself. The al hachartznayim bifni atzman, the al zogim bifni atzman, the seeds and the peels by themselves. Says Toisus, v'ahi also afugim Rabbi Lezer ben Nazir. This is where Rabbi Lezer ben Nazir is going to disagree. We're going to see in a second. The yom de'enu chayev ad sheyoichel shnei chartznayim the zog. It actually has to be a specific amount, as we're going to see in the Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer ben Nazir yomer ein chayev ad sheyoichel shnei chartznayim the zog. You actually have to have 2 seeds, consume 2 seeds and the peel. Now we keep translating what these words are, but it's actually a machlokas. Hachartznayim el hachitzainim. The chartznayim are on the outside of the grape, namely the peel, which is not what we said before. Hazogin el hapenimin. The zug, sounds like the word bell, are on the inside, namely the seed. Now, David Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Amar, no, that's not what it means. Shalotita, don't make a mistake. Rather, it's kazug. Think about it just like a bell, because if we're called the word in Hebrew are zagin. So, what is a bell? Just like the bell shabahem of an animal, hachitzon zug. The outer part is what we call the zug. So therefore, it's just like the skin, like the outer casing of the animal, of the outer casing of the grape is the skin or the peel, which is the same thing. The outer part of the bell is the bell itself. The panimi inbol, the inside is the clapper. So therefore, when we say the word zugin, an easy way to remember it, we think zug, which is also a bell, zug, and the din is that we know, rather, a bell is talking about the outside of it. So which is talking, therefore, the hazogin is the peel. Okay. So an interesting way to remember it. Gemara. Shleishim minin asurin benazir hatomachu hayotzim in a gefen in, which is mashma, the only time you're going to be chayiv is anything that comes from the grape. Gefen atzman lo, but the actual grape vines itself, like the leaves, the shoots, then the din is you're not going to be chayiv, assuming for some reason one would consume that. Masnisin de Rabbi Lezer. We're going to see this is not like Rabbi Lezer. The sign Rabbi Lezer Omer, I feel owen v'lovin b'mashma. Even when it comes to the leaves and the shoots, the branches, if you will, for some reason, I don't know why that's considered to be an edible product, but nonetheless, you would also be chayiv as a nazir consuming that as well. Fine. Okay, and we're going to see, as Taisa says, we're going to darshan this soon, even though it's a owen v'lovin is clearly a machlokas. Ikadi amri lo seifa. Some say it on the latter part. It says only once you consumed a kazayas from grapes. Min anavim in. My gefen atzmon lo. However, even if you would have consumed from the gefen itself a kazayas, you still would not be chayiv. Again, so again, we have this machlokas whether or not the olin and lulavin of the grape vines, whether or not that is also included in the prohibition of a nazir. Again, doesn't sound very appetizing, but nonetheless, that's what it says. So, but my kimifagi, what is the basis of their machlokas whether we include or exclude olin and lulavin? So on this, the Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Lezer darshi ribui mute, Rabbanan darshi klal prati. So whether you hold klal prati klal or ribui mute ribui is going to end up including or excluding the olin v'lulavin. So let's darshan it. Explain. Rabbi Lezer darshi ribui mute. So what is that? So it says meyayin v'sheicher yazer. So that is a miyut. It's specifically saying that you as a nazir cannot have wine. And sheikher means old wine. Sheikher is not beer, right? A person is specifically talking about old wine. So that's a miyut, specifically. Then it says, Mikol asher yasim gefen hayayin. Anything that comes from the grapevine, which is a riboy, which is inclusive. Miyut v'riba. So you have exclusive, then an inclusive. So what is that? That's riba hakol. That includes everything. So my riba kol mili. My miyut shabishta. It only comes to exclude shabishta, which are the branches. So that's what Rabbi Lezer ben Azari does. Rabbi Lezer darshins a riboy miyut, which is ravias akoil, and everyone only excludes one thing which is really very, very distant from everything else, which are the branches, shabishta. However, according to him, it would still include the on lulav. Rabbanan darshi klal prati. Biyad v'sheicher yazer prat. Which is more inclusive, is klal. And then it says mechartznaim v'yad zog. So then it again is more specific, talking about the chartznaim, which is the pit, and the zog, which is the peel. Chazer prat. So that's a specific again. So prat klal prat yatadan el kena prat. Whenever you have a prat klal prat, you now, why does the prat come? It's to tell you it has to be similar to the prat. Ma'pra maforish pre, it's only coming to forbid the nazir something which is the fruit itself. Upsilus pre, also the leftovers of the fruit, which is namely says the mafarish could go in anavim, the grapes, vayayin, v'chayim, wine and vinegar. That's so mafarish pre upsilus pre. So I've called pre upsilus pre. So it's only talking about the psilus of the pre, which therefore. Okay, so ma prat maforish pre gomer, I've called pre gomer. Maybe it's only if it's a complete fruit and nothing else. Something, let's say, is not completed or unripened. So amrit im kain mahaniachacha kasab b'mashma shel amru. So if that would be the case, that we would be so specific that we'd only be talking about these types of fruits that have to be a pre-gumor. So then why does the pasuk say shul omru anavim lachim v'yaveshim haksivi? What are we talking about? If we're talking about grapes which are moist or dry, it's already mentioned. Yan v'chayim it's haksivi. When it comes to wine and vinegar, that's something which we already included. So therefore, it must be coming to tell you like Lashon Rishon. Says the Mefarish, Af kol pri upsos pri. It comes to include vinegar. She'im ata omer af kol pri gomor. It comes to include all pri gomor, all complete fruits. Nimsa she'ena marba shum davar me'olam. You're not really including anything. You're not adding anything. So therefore, in order for it to be, in fact, some type of a riboy, to include things, and therefore it has to be the first thing that we said, which is Lashon Rishon, namely Psos Pri. Since we already came to include all things, so then why does it mention these two things? If it's coming to include everything, it's Ribu Hasakoil, so why does it mention the seeds, and why does it mention the peel? Anytime you find a product klal, you're not allowed to be done kenaprat. Rather, what it means is that it's coming to tell you that the klal is coming to add on to the prat. Until you have by Nazir in which there's another prat. So again, the fact that you have this notion of mentioning another prat, that changes things. Because otherwise, then you would say, when it comes to a prat uklal, we would say it would not be ke'ena prat, rather it would be the klal is just being moisef on the prat. So the fact that it says mechatznayim v'yad zog is actually coming then to be more inclusive. Omer Mar, Ma pran maforish pri b'solas pri, navkol pri b'solas pri, which again is according to the Tanakama, which is why vinegar is included. Pri inve psoilas pri mahi. So what does it mean when we're talking about fruit of grapes and the leftover from those fruits? What is it? So mahi, it's chaimetz, it's vinegar. So avkol pri, so also all of the fruits. So mahi, so it's guharki. It's talking about unripened grapes. I've called the psalos pri mahi amrav kahana isui inve derochin. It's coming to also include wormy grapes. That also is under the category of grapes in which one is not allowed to consume as a nazir. Not only unripened grapes, but also wormy grapes. Yad zog amravinu isui debein habeinoyim. So why does it say vi'ad zog? It's coming to say that even the things that are in between. That means everything which is in between the skin and the pits is also asur to the nazir. Omer Mar. If that's the case, ma pramaforish pre-gomor, afkol pre-gomor. So we said no, we can't use that as an example. It's already written. So it's not coming to add anything. Must be coming to say Lashon Rishon to include vinegar. So mi'acher shesafinu rabos kol davar, since it's coming to include everything. As we continue Lamed Hey Keder Shapradolcha Benazir V'Chatznayim V'Yad Zog. Okay. V'Chatznayim V'Yad Zog, and that's what we went out from there. Fine. We're going to actually stop there. Let's see a whole bunch of questions. Question 12. Eiz and Dover Megefen Hayayin. What's the matter? The thing which comes from the grapes. This mayit, it's excluding. L'kul yalma, ve'ein nazir chayv. So he said that's referring to shibishta, which is the branches. So that's mismayit l'kul yalma. And they asked, what is the machlokas whether nazir is chayv? So that we saw is the lulavin and the olin, the branches, the leaves rather, not the branches, the leaves and the shoots. but the actual shibishto, which is the branches, that everyone holds is not under the category. Question 13, which I wrote Tosfos only. Okay. So anything which is in between the seed and the pit. So he says like this. This is actually in Lamed Hamad Aleph, so maybe I didn't do this yet. Oh, actually, we're going to have to see this Taisus. Okay. So, Mahu bein habinayim the isur krol l'chai ben Nazir. What does that mean? What's between the two? So I just was taking it for granted. But look at this Taisus, which I didn't see yet. So let's see it on top of Lamed Hamad Aleph. The bein habinayim, the hainu guf ha'anav, which is the grape itself. V'hachi mash malish to the krah b'charsnami l'zog. Pirish. Masha bein chertzim l'zog. Whatever's between it. The kasha. Dahi guf ha'anav kvar kasav anavim. It already says grapes. So it can't be referring to the grape itself. It's referring to small grapes, which are between the big ones, that do not see the sun. They don't get ripened. They don't really grow up. And he says furthermore, that these are even worse than unripened grapes. At least boitzar on some level become big grapes. So maybe that's what it's coming to tell you. Even bein habinayim, these small grapes which are stuck within between the large ones, which will never hit the sun and never grow. So maybe that's what's coming to conclude. Question 13. It says 2 answers. So one is anavim katanim shebein hagadolim she'ena ruim pnei chama l'olam. The sun never sees it. V'loya gadolim l'olam. Or likat kazayas. Maybe I didn't see this yet. Not sure I didn't see this part of this Taisus. You gather a kazayas meha'oichel of food shebein hachartzan v'azog to kamash lon d'amrinan batal daito. Oh, so in other words, taka could be referring to a kazayas of oichel between the pit and the seed, and the chiddush is that if you eat it, you still get malchus. We don't say batal daito it's a koladam, that maybe it's not considered to be significant. The din is that you're still going to be chayv. I not Taisus. Okay. TA 9. Shloishim min masurin v'hayotz min yayin hagefen manis mayit b'mashmos t'masnisin. What is this coming to exclude? Dein chayav in a law. What are you not chayav? So gefen atzmon, which is on vu vehen, which is the same thing we said, that the grape itself, namely the grapevines, namely the leaves or the shoots. Again, it's a machlokas, but certainly shabishta. Okay. Let's see if we did question 10 yet. No. TB 10. Mahu ke'ena prat, since Rabbi ma'anavim v'chaimitz, did darshin lahu b'prat, we call it prat. So, in Uman Nismait Mishum She'en Ke'ena Prat. So it's coming to include TB10 from Navim, it's Nisraba Boitzar. It comes to include Botzar. Let's make sure we have that, which is Guriki, which is unripened Anavim Dakim. It says over here, Anavim Dakim Shigadim Bein Shar Garian Gedolim. So these are grapes which are of inferior quality because they're unripened. And then Mechaimetz Nisrabu Inve Dichrin. We went out from Chaimetz, that comes to include Inve Dichrin, even wormy grapes, also into the category of Nismayit, all in Vulavehen, but it comes to exclude the shoots and the leaves. Adkan.